I'm here to tell you that this podcast is probably one of the best I have ever watched or listened to, and it's crazy because Ruslan Kd has made so many videos reacting to George Janko's videos and podcasts himself, and he's finally on one, and it turns out that this is probably one of the best podcasts I have ever listened to. From things of being just humble and Ruslan being very straightforward and some of the testimonies given, all of that stuff was very, very good. And today I want to share some of my thoughts about the podcast and watch a little bit of it with you. Let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so this first part, Ruslan shares a lot of his childhood, his testimony, how he came to be who he is today. And I will say he went through a lot of different things that a lot of people would not come out of so good if they did not have God in their corner. So let's go ahead and watch it.
Okay, so let me just get into this real quick. So you're married with two kids.
Two kids.
And now I kind of want to peel back the layer when you said that you came from like a rough background. Were you, by any chance, like you had your faith in that broken home and then it helps you get out? Or did you, when you got out to build your own home, had to find faith?
Both. Okay, so I'm ethnically Armenian.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so my grandmother's Armenian.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would that make you? Not a quarter.
I think a quarter.
A
Yeah,
quarter,
a quarter. Yeah.
That's true. I didn't know you were Armenian.
Yeah, I always joke around. I go, I'm Assyrian, but I get my looks from Armenians.
So my father is 100% Armenian. My mother is adopted by an Armenian family, but she, I think, is like Russian or Ukrainian. That's what the 23andMe DNA test. And so we grew up in Azerbaijan, Baku, which is just north of Iran, east of Armenia. And that's a predominantly Muslim country. And it was under Soviet Union. So there's like layers to this, right? And because of the Soviet Union, we didn't grow up going to church. I didn't even know anything about faith or anything because it was like Soviet Union.
You're not allowed to.
You're not allowed to.
Yeah.
Right. And so my dad, because he's Armenian, we were more fair-skinned because my mom is Russian. The pogroms of Baku broke out. This is in the late 80s. This is where the Arzis had issues with the Armenians in Baku. So my dad was going back and forth, traveling to Moscow, working, and my mom, we stayed back. And long story short, we came out as refugees because the pogroms of Baku broke out, meaning that the Arzis wanted all the Armenians out of the land. And so in 91, we applied to a bunch of different places and we came to San Diego as refugees. And then when we finally came here, then I discovered like, oh, Armenia, oldest Christian nation, deep history. And I started going to Armenian Apostolic Church, a part of the Oriental Orthodox arm of the church. So I was like an altar boy and the whole bit, like all the way in.
How old are you?
Yeah, how old were you when you left Baku?
So 6. I was 6 when I left. And my mom and my dad, I didn't know that they were already on the rocks. Like their relationship was already heavy because my dad's working in Moscow. My mom is back in Baku. There's a lot of issues in their relationship. And what happened was I end up discovering these letters with like lipstick kissy marks, right? And I'm like, oh, this is sweet. Like my mom's like writing letters to my dad. And so I take them to my dad. Well, what I didn't know is that they were to her boyfriend back in Baku. And
So right off the bat, like, it would be so hard to be in the middle of a relationship like your mother and father, knowing that your mother or father is cheating. But then I would imagine doing something like that, taking those letters, you would feel like that you were somewhat responsible for a lot of the turmoil. I think it gets even worse, though. Let's continue.
So that was the straw that broke the camel's back for my dad. And he ends up...
You said the last straw? What did he know she was...
Yeah, he knew.
But it was that your son brought it to you.
Yeah, he knew. She had a boyfriend. He had a girlfriend in Moscow. This was their fresh start. We're coming to America, new life, fresh start. And she's still writing her boyfriend. And I suppressed all these memories as a child. I didn't know this. So she ends up being sad. He's like, I'm done. Walks out, leaves, makes an effort to be in my life, but she made it difficult. She just, my mom's always had a pretty terrible taste in men besides my dad. And so she's like downward spiral of alcoholism. Her dad ended up, dying back in Baku. And my dad moves on, brings his girlfriend out, gets remarried. At the same time, I'm an altar boy, and there's these older altar boys in the church. They're like maybe 13, 14. I'm like 7-ish, 8-ish. And long story short, they ended up molesting me. These older kids end up molesting me. And it was very graphic. And I don't remember.
So just in the first, I don't know how far we into this, like 5 minutes, he has already done something that could make you feel responsible for the divorce of your parents and been molested as a child. I feel like most people that go through stuff like this, I don't even like one of those things would be very traumatic, right? I don't even know how to put it into words. Like I don't even know how somebody comes out the other side doing as well as he is right now, unless you have God, because God is still bigger than all of our problems. But here he is, very good, has a very good YouTube channel, a very good influencer, seems like a genuine guy. Little snazzy jacket he has on, he made himself. I mean, just so many things that are going well for this Ruslan, and like he went through two of the most traumatic things in his testimony already. And I said, well, I'll go. We were like 4 or 5 minutes in. We're still only like 6 minutes. Man, let's keep on.
Remember how long it lasted, but it all came out. It all culminated and all came out. And there was a misplacement of responsibility, and basically they made it seem like I was like the victim in the situation. The kid was the one that aggressively did it all. Like I was the one that initiated this stuff. And it was really dark time. So like my dad's gone. My mom's an alcoholic. I get sexually assaulted by these older teenage altar boys. And the church ends up just kind of like shrugging and not really doing anything about it. And they remarried my dad, which she was technically, I guess, according to my mom, not divorced. So all of this, by the time I'm 10, 11, I am an atheist. Like I'm like telling people I'm an atheist. God doesn't exist.
Don't blame
And if
him.
he does, he definitely doesn't like me. I stopped going to Armenian church. I ended up getting arrested for breaking into houses at 11.
I just really can't blame somebody for going through all that and not just having the feelings of wanting to be atheist, right? Because so many people equate to what you're going through as God's fault. We're already a fallen creation, though, and sometimes the only way to get out of the treacherous life that we live is to actually reach out to God. Because the circumstances he was in was not because of God, but because of his parents. But how could you not question everything that your parents believed? Because I don't know. It's a lot. Let's keep on.
11. I was on probation my whole 6th and 7th grade year. Gangs, drugs, smoking weed, alcohol, like you name it. I was the crazy disgruntled kid because I had a father wound. Like my dad left, and my dad wasn't there to protect me from this stuff, and the church hurt me. And it was just a mess, man, like a mess of a childhood that thankfully God and his sovereignty and in his providence just came after me in a really kind of a miraculous way.
Well, that is so, I mean, it's so heavy, and it's so much for a child to process. And certainly if you don't have figures around you that are able to help you, process it and understand it and get through it, I mean, that's just incredibly difficult. And so at the time when you're 11, 12, were you living with your mom at this time?
Yeah, living with my mom. My dad's not coming around. Every time he'd come around, there'd be a fist fight. There would be a drunk dude to greet him, and just insane stuff. My mom would jump in when my dad is trying to fight off this guy. It's like crazy stuff. So my dad is like, dude, like, because I ended up confronting him about all this stuff. Like, where were you? Like, what happened, dude? And so he's like, you don't remember this? You don't remember this? You don't remember this? And I was like, I would think you still should have been there, but okay, I get it. Like you moved on and you tried, but it was hard. It was really hard for him. So it allowed me to humanize him. At the same time, my mom slowly turns it around. We were on welfare for 5 years, like government, cheese, like you name it. Like we had the programs, and she slowly turns it around. She got a job at a casino, and she starts kind of improving our situation little by little. And as I'm getting arrested, she sees that I'm in Normal Heights, San Diego, which I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with San Diego. San Diego was very different in the early 90s. Like this is early mid 90s, a very different San Diego. And so because I got arrested, I kept getting in trouble. My 7th grade year, I had like a 1.0 GPA. They almost like revoked my little probation because I didn't do the community service hours. Like I was just a mess. And so a couple of things happened. The manager of our apartment, her name was Cherie. She's a sweetheart. We're still friends to this day. She ends up getting caught for moving weight through an airplane. Like she's moving weight for street dudes. And she was really in that world to the point where me and her son would do sleepovers. And one night we did a sleepover at my house, and like the alleyway where their house was got shot up. Like we were all in the same apartment complex. So she ends up getting saved, like radically saved, comes out and is just sharing the gospel with everybody. And everybody is getting saved in our apartment complex. It's like maybe like one of those like 8-unit ones, except the 2 Armenian families. Like Armenians were like, no, we're like stubborn. We're not doing it. And so she and other people around me started prophesying, you're going to do great things for the Lord someday. God's going to use you to speak to millions of people. And I'm like, there's no God. And there's a God. He doesn't like me very much. Like, stop it. And sure enough, like God used those people to plant seeds. And the end of my 7th grade year, this kid, the Samoan kid, ends up bringing a gun to school. And he shows it to me. And then I get called into the principal's office. And there's detectives there, and they're like, hey, so-and-so said that it was your gun. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you guys talking about? And they're like, well, we know you're on probation. We know this and this. You messed this up, blah, blah, blah. They know me. They already know my reputation. And so I'm like, no, like, this is not my gun. You guys are crazy. I've literally, it's like a movie scene. I get up and I cuss at the daggone detectives, like, that's not my effing gun. Run the fingerprints, and you'll see it's not my gun. They're like, we are gonna run the fingerprints, and we're gonna prove your gun. You're gonna go away. Like, it was like, first of all, why are you talking to a minor without legal counsel or a parent guardian? This is crazy.
They like to do that so you can confess things.
Dude, it was nuts. The same day or the next day, I'm going home from school. This is like the last few days of my 7th grade year at Wilson Middle School. The Samoan kid is walking up the street, and I'm like, hey man, what's up with that whole gun thing? Like, what happened? And all I see is a blade in his right hand. And I look and I see a blade in his hand, and I'm like, oh. And he's like, why did you snitch on me? And I'm like, snitch on you? And at that point, I just booked it down El Cajon Avenue as quickly as I could. Thankfully, he was a big Samoan kid, and there was no way he was going to catch me.
What was the update on that? Or what happened to him?
I have no idea.
You ran that fast?
I ran that fast, and we moved into Vista, California, which is where I live now. That same weekend we moved, and I went from being a 1.0 GPA student, finished my 8th grade year with almost a 4.0, just a change of environment, different environment, basketball. My plan was, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I'm not smoking weed. I'm not doing anything else. At this point, I had lost my virginity. I had done everything there is to do. I'm done. This is my fresh start. And I ended up deciding, okay, I'm going to be a professional basketball player. Like, that's going to be the path. And unfortunately, my mom's DNA didn't really hit me much. And my mom's boyfriend had to sit down and have a conversation with me about Armenian genetics and explain to me that there's never been an Armenian that's made it to the NBA.
I was gonna make a joke, but I was like, yo, if you made it to NBA, then you know God's real. This video is sponsored by Life Cycle. In the beginning of this podcast, you could probably see me dripping this into my orange juice because I just came back from travel, and I know I'm about to have an amazing conversation, and I need my brain fog to leave me alone, and I need to make sure that I'm super focused and I could actually speak properly. And so what I did is I put lion's mane, chaga, and cordyceps into my orange juice, and it helped me drive this vehicle. So if you guys want 20% off of Life Cycle, hit the link in my description and get 20% off. Use my code George20 for 20% off of Life Cycle. Get the shrooms to get you guys in the room. I'll see you guys later.
So my buddy Rufat, who's from the same town, he always cracks a joke. He goes, if you count the Kardashians, we've taken more careers than we've added to the NBA when it comes to Armenians. So I, at the same time, start dating a girl. and it's the end of my freshman year, and the only way I could see her is if I can go to church with her and her family on Sundays. And so
Man,
I'm
God's been knocking at your heart.
yeah, man.
for
So
a
this is
long
like
time.
2 years. I start going to church, and it's just like a regular, like evangelical, kind of seeker-friendly church. But I'm hearing the gospel, and I'm the kid that I break up with her. We get back together. We break up. I'm the kid that's putting up my hand every week saying the prayer for 2 years straight. I then dated Jehovah's Witness girl. I didn't have Mormon friends. I have Muslim friends. This is around 9/11, so this is like when it was really, really crazy. And I end up wrestling with God for 2 years, like hardcore. And my manager and our lead driver at my first job, I worked at Pizza Hut, we're both Christian. And I'm like, I think Jesus is the Son of God, but is he God in the flesh? I'm confused. And they gave me a book called The New Evidence That Demands a Verdict. And it was by Josh McDowell. And it was like a thick old apologetics book. And I just smashed through that whole book. Like, I'd never read that much. And I ended up surrendering my life to Jesus the end of my junior year and fully like gave it all over to God. Like, I'm doing it your way. I'm not going to do this 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I'm not going to, do the girls and try to, the status. And I meet my wife in high school around that same time. And so a year after graduating, me and my wife started dating. She was a year behind me. 4 years later to the date, we got married on our 4-year dating anniversary, July 5th. And I was able to pursue music full time because I was like, if I can't be a basketball player, I'm gonna be a rapper, right? Because what else is there if you're from the hood? So I ended up quitting my job in 2015, and from 2015 to 2020, I did rapping as a full-time thing, traveling around the country, playing colleges, playing churches, playing anything I could do, and did some cool stuff in the music industry. One of my artists ended up doing a deal with Interscope, and that kind of hurt our friendship, and a bunch of stuff happened. And so at the same time, I started dabbling in YouTube, vlogging, 2015 Casey Neistat era, failing miserably. I started vlogging my day as a full-time rapper, like June 1st, 2015, my day as a full-time rapper. And thankfully, I did the music and I built a YouTube on the side. And so 2019 was my first year. Every single day upload of podcasts, just like this. I would go green room, sit down with somebody that was a homie. We do podcasts, and every day I dropped a clip. 2020, the pandemic shut down. I can't tour. I can't do shows. No one's paying for features. I started going live on YouTube. 15,000 subscribers at the beginning of 2020, like 80,000 subscribers by the end of 2020.
Let's
go.
go.
And that's when everything I was doing well with music. We were doing like 6 figures a year as an independent musician.
Dang.
But when it really popped off was when the YouTube hit, and then the YouTube just kind of exponentially blew up. Yeah.
I have so many questions.
Okay.
I have so many. One, who's playing you in the movie? That's what I just gotta know. Could you get the AC? My eyes are just drying out from
So George Janko makes a comment about, who's playing in the movie, and I see why, because like, for one, Ruslan's testimony is like one of those stories where like you're like, all right, yeah, I can't get any worse, and it just continually gets worse. Like thing after thing after thing happens to him, and then there is a moment when God steps in and his life begins to turn around. And it's just really awesome to hear testimonies like that. But let's continue to watch this podcast because it's not over yet, and it just keeps getting better. Let's go ahead and jump into that right now.
The truth is, like, I couldn't even handle it, and I gave it to God. So I am acting like the old me that's like arrogant.
So, question for you guys:
Yeah.
when are you guys getting married?
We're actually
One of the questions that probably a lot of followers of George Janko is wondering is, when is he getting married? Because he is a Christian influencer still sleeping with his girlfriend outside of marriage. Even though he's wrestling with this topic, I am so glad that somebody comes straight forward to him that disagrees with this and ask him, hey, what is going on with this? And that is one of the reasons why this part right here gained a lot of respect from me from Ruslan, because he also did a video reacting to the point of George Janko saying that he feels like he's already married internally, even though he hasn't had the proper ceremony and all that. So not only is he about it in the reaction video that he made when George Janko said this on a previous podcast, he comes face to face in his own podcast with George Janko and confronts him just like you should. Let's continue to watch.
we're about to pick a date. We're not going to mention what it is, but we've noticed that we've been slowing down because of this is what happened. This is actually really fun. I'm glad you brought this up. I told God when I couldn't afford to get married, I said, God, you give me a career where I could afford it, I'll get married immediately. But then my job got so successful and I got so busy that I'm like, all right, okay, well, let me just finish this and we'll do this and we'll finish this. And I was like, what a piece of crap I am, bro. I literally promised God that I would get it done. And now because of the rewards he's given me, because he never fails me, but I fail him, that I pushed it back. And so now we're taking it very seriously.
So it's just you guys are just busy and like want to do a big ceremony for.
As soon as we got engaged, I mean, life was literally insane. I think we were home maybe 2 days out of that month, and so it was just like thing after another and after another.
We didn't even get to celebrate it. Like,
no, we never even really like afterwards. But I mean, we get to celebrate every day together, so it's fine. But and then we've been in Arizona, and now we just got back, so now we get to visit venues, and once we visit our venues, then we get to pick the date. Easy as that.
my problem is I see us that we're married already. So like that's
That's what I was gonna get
that's
to.
bad, huh? That's
what I
bad.
was gonna
Okay,
get to.
come on with the word. Right?
So-
Yeah, flipped it up.
So I feel like George Janko knew this was coming because I know he watches some of the Ruslan videos where he reacts. So he knows somewhat that there's going to be a little bit of friction between him and Ruslan sitting down the second he starts to bring up the whole marriage thing.
So have you guys ever went through like the entire book of 1 Corinthians?
No,
You
I
guys
haven't.
would love it. Okay.
I don't know about you.
I'm gonna try to give you guys a quick summary, okay? And I guess you can keep as much of this as you want. Okay, so Corinth, port city, metropolitan, booming. Think this is like a modern day Los Angeles almost.
Yeah,
if you think
yeah.
about it, right? So they are not the most mature in their faith, but nevertheless, Paul keeps affirming them in their faith, right? So the first couple chapters of Corinth, they're stuck in the cult of personality. Some guys are following Apollos, some guys are following Paul, some guys are following Peter, and Paul is like, no, like you guys got it all wrong, right? Like don't do that. It's about Jesus. I'm glad I didn't baptize you. It's about Jesus. So he's like laying this out. Chapter 3, he gets into basically saying like, because you guys are so into personalities and status, like you're worldly, you're not drinking meat yet. I'm still giving you milk, right? Then he gets into chapter 5. Chapter 5, 6, and 7, some gnarly stuff is happening in Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 5 is one of the gnarliest chapters where you basically find out, Paul says, a dude in the church is sleeping with his stepmom. Or his father's wife, it says. So hopefully it's his stepmom, and it's not something worse than that.
Sounds like I know it sounds disrespectful, but it sounds like the porn videos that everybody's like.
It's, bro.
So like,
That-
I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
It's
I'm
weird.
just saying that they're coming after the same hearts.
Yeah, well, it's very parallel to America today,
Yeah.
and specifically, they're sexually liberated. Their God is their stomach. Their God is their sexuality. Like, so then he gets into this, and in 1 Corinthians 5, he like really rails this down, and he's like, listen, expel the wicked from among you. Like, it's not your job to judge those in the world. Like, you confront the person in the church. You judge those in the church. And then 1 Corinthians 6, he basically goes on to say, like, they're suing each other and they're petty and they're all this stuff. He's like, don't do that. Like, that's a bad look on the gospel. Can't you just figure this stuff out on your own? And then he goes on to say, like, sexually immoral people, fornicators, adulterers, yada, 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 won't inherit. But this is how you were. So even though they're dealing with remnants of sexual immorality, it says that this is who you were. You're not this anymore, right? And then this is the verse that is really interesting, where he gets into instructions on Christian marriage, 1 Corinthians chapter 7. So I'm going to read this to you guys.
Let's go.
Now to the unmarried and the widows, I say this, right? And so there's a lot of widows in the church at the time. The church would take care of the widows. It is good for them to stay unmarried as I do. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry. And this is the principle. For it is better to marry than to burn with passion. Mm-hmm. So he's basically saying, look, if you are passionate for each other, if you have sexual desires for each other, don't continue being how the world is. Might as well just go get married. Like you might.
No. I know that. But here again, I hope I don't get smoked for this. But there's so many Bible verses. Like there was a guy who I wish I knew it from my heart, but there was a guy who like made it final by just going into a tent and having sex with her, and that was like his marriage. Mm-hmm. I think it's because we had sex, that covenant's already there, regardless if like I have a priest like fulfill it or not. Mm-hmm. I feel like because we already have that covenant, we became one. Mm-hmm. That I'm just honoring her like my wife. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, sometimes like when I introduce her, I'll introduce her as my wife.
I've heard you do that before.
Yeah. And it's because I told God, I go, God, like I've already made that mistake, so I'm not sitting here waiting for her to be my wife. I took what wasn't mine yet, I already have permission from her father, and I've given you my promise. As of right now, I am married to her. In your eyes, I feel. And then I will also get married the way that it should, so I could be a good example of what you have to be married. I think that's my problem of why I kept pushing it back, is because we live just like husband and wife. And so I think what happened is, like, again, like, this is always my issue. My ego thinks my wisdom is like, okay, we're already married, so it's fine. And so we could just keep pushing it back. But it's dishonest, because if I'm representing Christ, then I should represent how the church represents marriage. So I know I'm wrong.
Yeah. How do you feel like you're his wife?
I mean,
I will look at you. Can answer.
So before he goes to respond to this, I don't remember everything that Ruslan says here. I did watch this or listen to this in the car on the way to work already once, but what I want to say is I think the biggest problem with if marriage worked the way George Janko is explaining here is that there would be so many people just using that as the excuse or the reason why they're having sex with their girlfriend, and even being able to manipulate their partner and different things like that without actually making the full commitment before man and before God. So I understand, and I do truly understand why George Janko wrestles with this so much, because there's been points in my life where I've wrestled with different sexual immoralities and different things like that. So at no point do I blame him for the rationales that he's using. But I do believe, especially if he's going to be in front of all the people and all that kind of stuff, he definitely has to be humble enough to realize when he's wrong. And one of the reasons I like George Janko so much is because he's so good at actually humbling himself and admitting that he's wrong, and putting himself on the right path, and willing to listen to people that are where he has been, have already learned from that mistake. So just as a human being, I think that's why George Janko is so relatable and able to, just have a good podcast and listen to him. Well, let's go ahead and watch and see what the response is after all this is said.
No, I do. That's the thing, because like how Georgie and I's relationship, we've always, and thankfully, honestly, because of his, like, he's led our relationship this way. We've involved God in our relationship since the very first day that we started dating. And so because of that, he's always treated me like his wife, if that makes sense. Like, his actions from him dating me to then him being engaged to me didn't all of a sudden change, where he's like, oh, well, now I look at you, my wife, so now I'm going to start acting like a man. He always has. So once we made that promise to God, we made that promise to my family, we made that promise to his family, and we announce it, you know what I mean? We see each other like, okay, in the eyes of God, like, you know what I mean? We are one. Yeah. We are married, And so, but of course, like, a ceremony and having a wedding is something that's very important to me. I know it's something that's very important to him, and it's something that we very much so look forward to. But I will say that in that sense, I have so much to learn still. My relationship with God is still so new. And as Georgia said, and I think this is a great way of putting it, like, I'm a baby when it comes to my relationship with my walk with Jesus. And there's so much I need.
So that alone, just realizing that you need work, that you have to learn, that you have to continually learn at any point, no matter how much you begin to know about God, understanding and being humble enough to know that you can always learn, is probably one of the best traits you can have as a Christian, to be honest, because that keeps you from being prideful. And we always know, or we have always heard, that pride comes before the fall, and it is in the Bible. So we know it to be true. So him and his girlfriend here knowing that and being humble, I think helps them out the most. I really do.
I need to learn when it comes to, like, our covenant and marriage. And so when we got engaged, in my mind, I was like, well, I want us to take our time, because I don't want you to be stressed. I don't want to be stressed. We have so much work going on, and I want you to enjoy every bit of it. And so I think took that, and I was like, let's take our time. But then there's so many things I have to learn, in the sense that it's like, well, no, like, there should be more of an urgency. Like, we need to be married so that we are, in right standing. Even though we feel like we're in right standing, I know that there are some things that we need to do in order to be fully in right standing, right?
Yeah.
So
the heart is deceitful, right? And my deceitful heart made it seem. I keep putting my foot there. And
you're good. I can move my foot.
No. It's because your Bible. I don't want my foot to be towards your Bible. I think what happened is, like, because I see us as, like, we're married, and like she just said, like, I was leading the relationship with faith. but I poisoned it because I put my own worldly needs there. So I corrupted it. So it's not like I'm like, I found a loophole and now we're married. It's me just with like shame on my face. Like, I failed as a leader. I took what wasn't mine yet. And so I'm not going to sit here and say that I was right, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold that responsibility.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, like, I love that you guys are living this in front of the whole world, so that you're like, I'm new to this thing, dude. Like, I'm still figuring out. And you guys, like, even with the Girls Gone Bible episode and you being vulnerable about like language and all these things, like there's a refreshing authenticity that I think you guys have that I think is so good in the sense of like you being willing to walk in front of the whole world. And that can't be easy. I think the flip side to that is like kind of what you already said, right? Like, in the eyes of our society and our culture, we tend to have a low view of the symbolism of a ceremony, a low view of the symbolism of coming before a man, a priest, a pastor, whatever capacity. And so then we end up, because you guys are functionally living like a married couple, like practically you live together, you sleep in the same bed, right? You're doing all the things. And so
Not at my parents' house though.
good.
I'm not. I'm dead ass not allowed to.
Yeah. No, that'd be
I'm
weird.
not allowed to.
Yeah.
Like you don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to. Like,
That's good.
even that we're engaged, if we spent the night there, I have to sleep in the living room and she
That's
sleeps in the
good.
living room.
That's good.
But I
And so-
kind of like it.
yeah. Well,
I think it's cute. I don't know.
Well, because I think there's a reverence you have for your parents, and there's probably a expectation they have for you.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, in any stream of Christianity, Orthodoxy, Syrian Church of the East, Oriental Orthodox, Catholicism, Protestant, in any stream of Christianity, they're gonna look at you guys as maybe you're functionally living, but there should be some sort of ceremony or something done, in my opinion, in the interim. Like,
Yeah, no.
and there
Yeah,
is.
well, there
like,
is that.
like find
Over
it.
my dead body, will I not have a full wedding? And I think that's the thing.
No.
As a girl, get stuck because I'm like, I want it to be perfect and I want it to be everything my dreams. And then it's like, well, hold on. I need to do what's right with God, and I need to get on it so I can do
Well, so
the things that God needs me to do.
Can I give you guys my advice? Can I speak
please.
into this? So my advice would be, plan the wedding of your dreams. Like, do everything. You guys are going to crush it. It's going to be beautiful, right? But I would recommend, and pray about it. Actually, don't pray about it. I would recommend do something that with a pastor, that where you exchange vows and you solidify that you're married before God, before a pastor, a priest, whoever
We've
you
thought
want it to
about
be.
this.
Yeah, we've talked about this.
Honestly,
And
I think
even if
I think
it's-
it's something we should do.
I know.
And here's the reason why is because I hate I hate the guilt of it.
Yeah.
I hate the guilt of it. And also, it's like, I think what happened in our life is that we're trying to please everybody, that we're like failing God.
There's so many variables, I think, to this, and like of everyone in our lives, and even for me, like personal, family members where
Expectation.
Oh, here she is. No. Get it. Yo, I
I
cried.
need you guys to know that, like, even though I'm clapping when Rouson says this, I have so much respect for George Janko and so much understanding for the position that he's in. I do not blame him at all for acting the way that he's been acting and conducting the relationship the way he's been conducting it, because I just know how he feels. I've been the guy that you see here before. Like, I've been in those similar situations. And like Rouson was saying, and like I've already said, watching them make these mistakes in front of all these people can't be easy. And being able to admit you're wrong is also a sign of, I think, a love for God. So, see what else he says.
Cried on this podcast. You have to.
I
You
cry
have to.
every podcast.
You have to, or I'm gonna look so dumb.
No, sorry. No, but like,
I really don't know what you're saying.
I don't know. Okay, hold on.
I love you so much.
Okay. Like, for me, even like personal relationships I have with family members where there was certain things going on that stopped me, for moving forward in certain areas, because I felt like things weren't in right standing with certain families. So I was like, oh, I can't move forward yet because it doesn't feel right, not moving with this person. But there's always going to be something in the way, there's always going to be like
Yeah.
so much things going on, right?
I know what you're talking about.
So, regardless of anything, it's interesting we're having this conversation now because, it's something that was been in my heart for like a few weeks now, where I've thought, because we talked about this before, we're like, should we just have, like a private, ceremony with a priest so we can be fully in right standing with God, and then we can plan the wedding of our dreams. We talked about that, but then we're like, I don't know, do we want to do that? Do we want to save that for the real thing, all that stuff? And then last few weeks I've been thinking about it hard, because I personally have had my own conversations with God, and where I felt like, okay, that is something I need to do, because if we're going to continue to, be together as we are being together, then I need to make sure that I don't know, explain it. It's like, once and once you know what you're doing is wrong, then it's like, how can I turn a blind eye to that? And then keep coming to God and being like, well, Lord, like, help me with this and help me with this and be there with me through this and make sure that this doesn't happen. But then it's like, well, am I doing my part? Am I making the sacrifice? And no, Yeah. And so.
I didn't know you were feeling this way. So was I.
Really?
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I just, that whole thing about me making like a promise to God and not fulfilling it has been eating me up like crazy. I think it's because we weren't going to announce this, but we're about to get our dream home. And
Congrats,
when
bro.
I walked in it, I felt super
so
guilty,
cool.
bro. Because like I would literally dream about this type of house, and I always knew that I was going to be married when I walked into this house. So not fully being married, I was just kind of like, man, this sucks. Not on his part. On my part, like if I was a partner with somebody and they kept, like you said, you have that like that feeling when somebody says they're going to do something and they don't, it rages you. It's like, I would be outraged if the amount of times I did that to my God, if my partner did that to me. I don't think I would be able to even handle it.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think sometimes we'll buy into this deception that like we need to spend so much time planning the wedding that we overlook building the marriage and building the marriage on a healthy foundation. And me and my wife, we crossed boundaries, and I could tell you guys, like, there was consequences to that, of like not doing it God's way, all the way. But that doesn't mean there's not grace and there's not mercy, and I think you guys are in a position where you know that when you do things God's way in a practical sense, the supernatural release of that. Like we talked about the honoring the mother and father, right?
Yeah.
Like, listen, I'm just gonna honor my I can't speak to my mom that way. And
It's above our understanding.
Yeah, and you do it, and then like something like kind of unlocks, and you're like, whoa. And not to mention like the weight of the shame and the guilt is lifted, and you're like, oh man, this is that way. And so I think you guys are in a spot where, outside of like you being massively influential to a lot of people, and how beautiful that would be to be like, hey, we're going to have a ceremony, but like in the interim, we decided to get married because we want to honor God with our bodies, and our bodies are the temple of God, and we're going to do it in a way that glorifies God. I think your parents would probably love that as well, even though they may not be at the ceremony and right? And I think it would be optimal for your own spirituality, like where you are with Jesus. I think it'd be good, and I think you guys would appreciate it.
You want to do that?
I do. And what's crazy is that before, why I was not for the idea is my own, like work.
Ever since they talked about this whole marriage thing and like being married but not really being married, doing this covenant but not before man, just promise to God, I knew as soon as I seen Ruslan come on their podcast, I knew that this would be the podcast, or this would be the time that George Janko had to either face the fact that he was 110% wrong, which seems like he faced that before now, or he would agree that, yeah, we're going to go get married, like, as soon as possible. And I am very thankful and also impressed, and also becoming an even bigger fan of not even just George Janko's podcast, but the man himself, for being able to admit when he's wrong and go do the thing that is right. It's awesome to see. We need more people in the world just like this. Let's continue to watch.
Worldly pride of like, well, I don't know. I feel like then is the moment gonna not be as special? Like when we have like the full wedding with everyone standing in front of us, like I want it to feel as when we're standing in front of each other, I want it to like, keep that specialness. Like if we do it now and then we do it again later, as if we redo it later, is it kind of fake when we redo it? And it's kind of fake in front of everyone? And then is that going to not feel as special? But then that's just a stupid doubt when I know that it's like, if I follow what God wants me to do, he's going to make it 10 times folds, a million times folds better than what it was. And he's shown us this so many times. And yet, you know, we continue to doubt because we're human and we do that. But it's just funny because that was my fear, that I was like, I didn't want to take away from that special moment by taking away. But it's like, well, maybe it's going to end up being a million times more special because we'll get to have that. And you know what I mean? Have it again later.
I agree 100%. I think we just the devil kept us preoccupied.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to fail my mom. I got to make sure this is happening. Oh, you got to make sure that your family thing's going. I'm like, okay, well, make sure we have to plan it because of the work. Oh, we're so busy. How can we put this down? And it's just like, I made a promise to God and I failed us. So
You did not fail
oh,
us.
100% I did, because I guarantee you, if I would have picked a day, you would have came. God didn't look
but
at you.
I told you that I wanted to find the venue in order to have the
but
date.
God doesn't look at you and say you failed it. If I'm gonna take the road of leadership, then I have to be the one to be like, nah, we're sinning against God. This has to be done. So this was all of my fault.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I can understand what you're
was.
saying, but it's not all of your fault.
Roos,
You
who's
were
wrong?
trying- You were trying to please me.
ultimately, he's the head.
Thank you.
So I think that
I understand
it's
that
ultimately
too, but
his responsibility. If fault is an interesting word, right? But it is your responsibility. Everything that happens.
Well, it is
in
your
my
fault
house-
that you're hot and I couldn't keep my hands off you. That's your fault.
But I also under the fact that like you wanted to please my wishes, and the fact that I said I was like, no, I need to find the venue first, because then once we find the venue, they give us the date, because sometimes you can't pick the date. You know what I mean? If the venue's available. So like you were trying to please me so I could find the right venue. Like, you know.
And by the way, we can have everything that your heart desires. I just think that we get to the church steps. And then, you know, it's so funny, circling back to everything we talked about, we search the kingdom first, right? We finish what we promised him. And I think everything that our heart desires will fall underneath that.
Amen.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look at you, dude. Yo, the Girls Gone Bible might have cleaned my mouth, but you just cleaned my covenant. I think that's a lot stronger.
So, hope you guys enjoyed this little excerpt on like just marriage and looking at it from such a worldly perspective of trying to justify and make all these excuses and all of this different stuff. But sometimes we really have to sit down, analyze what we're doing, and know whether or not it's following God's will. Because a lot of times when we're making those excuses, we're kind of going back and forth in our head about whether or not something's okay. Should I do it a different way? We really just have to black and white search the Bible and search God's heart to understand whether we are making a mistake, doing something outside of God's will, or are we actually doing what God wants us to do. And if it doesn't line up with what the Bible says, then we know we have to make an adjustment. But that being said, there's one last clip here that I want us to watch. Let's go ahead and jump into that clip.
I don't know how often you guys are here versus Arizona. I have an amazing Armenian pastor friend of mine that's local.
Yeah, see, that under my mom's rules and
Yeah.
regulations, she has to pick it. You know, my best friend, dude, this is actually kind of crazy. And I've been dreaming about telling this story, bro. My best friend, great guy, for sure burning in hell one day. Like he like this dude is not a good human being, but he's also the best human being. But one of the things that we would always joke about is that he was just not even super atheist, bro. Like just at all realms blasphemous. Like if I was in high school and I would pray over my meal, he would whisper in my ear, "Go ahead, my child, you're allowed to." Like, bro, like he was just this demon. But for some reason, like I knew that this kid is like has a great heart.
He didn't know any better, and he thought it was funny.
Nah, he's just an amazing dude. And my mom told me, she goes, you know, Kaveh can't be your best man. And bro, like I've never fought for anything. Like, okay, you want the priest? Fine. If you want this, fine. Everything she says, fine. But I stood on my business and I looked at my mom and I said, no. I go, I don't believe in this. This doesn't make any sense to me. I go, that is my best friend that's been through so much with me. I go, that's the only thing I'll stand on. And she said, that's not me, that's God. You have to take it up with him. And then I had a conversation with this man who's very knowledgeable of the gospel, and he convinced me that what my mom to say is true.
But wait, you're missing that part of like, why is it that he can't be your best man?
He's not baptized.
There you go.
Yeah, he's not baptized. And sorry, I forgot. Sorry, because it was.
You know, I actually did not know that, but it makes sense because the role of your best man in a holy covenant type situation, it definitely should be somebody that is a man of God. So that's definitely something I learned from watching this podcast. Leave a comment if you learned that as well.
It was such an emotional thing for me. And but recently, this past year, he's been asking me questions about Jesus. So it got me really angry when they asked me to go tell him, hey, no, like, you can't. I cried about it, and she knows, bro, because I was like, if I tell this to him, he's going to completely walk away. Because it's not a welcoming thing. It's like very judgmental. It falls out in the same category of why people don't like Christians or Catholics. And I just started shaking and I started crying. And I'm like, God, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I can't be the reason why this guy turns the door down. And like, no, I don't want to do this. So I came in there with a positive attitude, just laughing. I use comedy to deflect. I was like, hey, listen, bro, like, we're holding up the ceremony. We're going to figure it out. I'm getting an attorney. We're going to get a loophole. Like, I'm going to talk to Michael about this. Like, you know, just making jokes. And he's like, oh, why can't I? I was like, oh, it's because you're not baptized. Still slinging jokes. And he was like, oh, okay. And I was like, you're not upset? And he goes, no, man. He's like, if this is what your mom wants, like, and again, right there, like, what a best friend, right? Like, didn't make me stress out more, didn't put it on me. And I was on my way to basketball, like about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, and I'm driving, and I'm having a terrible day, bro. That's why I'm going to go play basketball, literally just to get my, and I'm just angry, bro. I am angry, bro. And when I'm angry, I like to be alone, and I sit there and meditate so I don't make any stupid decisions. I'm angry, and I get a call from my friend, and I almost reject it because I'm like, I don't want to talk to my friend when I'm angry. And, but I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. So I answered the phone and I go, hey, man, what's up? And he goes, how you doing? I'm like, I'm having the worst day. I was like, how you doing, man? He's like, good. He goes, I just wanted to let you know I'm getting baptized.
Get out.
Bro.
Wow.
When I was on the basketball court and my best friend told me that, I just broke down, sobbing my eyes out. And I was like, wait. Like, bro, like, you can't just do this because you're going to be like my best man. Yeah. And he goes, nah, I sat here and I thought about it. If I had to worship a God, I just think that Jesus has to be God. And, bro, I hate to say this in front of Belle, that for sure beat my wedding day. like, I thought my wedding day was going to be the greatest day of my life, dude. I can't tell you, bro, even talking about it, like, having my best friend get baptized, like, I think people don't understand what it feels like because people think that we're judging other people for not knowing who God is. But when you see it from our lens, we just see dead people walking. And the closer you are to Christ, the more alive you feel. So, like, we're not judging you. We're trying to, like, do everything we can so you could be with us in paradise. And
that's beautiful.
And when my best friend told me that, man, like, it made me realize two things. Stop fighting God, right? Because I was like, no, I'm going to find a loophole and I'm going to do this. And this is something that God, this is his law. Like, why am I trying to fight it to fit my needs? But when I stood up to my friend and I was like, hey, like, I put him in a position to be like, you should really reflect on this. Like, is this something, and it's so meaningful, is this something you really want to do? Sometimes the hard road that you don't want to take, if you know what's on the other end of that road, you would run through that road because you got to stop putting God in a box. And
so first of all, this last part, this part here of George Janko's friend getting baptized after his resistance to what God wanted him to do. How many of us know out there that sometimes when you step out in faith onto the water where it seems stormy and unsafe, that God's going to meet you there? And not only is he going to meet you there, he's going to keep you safe, and he's going to give you the things that you desire, especially because you stepped out in faith. And one of the reasons I believe that his friend got baptized was because of George Janko's faith, because he was faithful in a situation that he was trying to stand his ground on. And he didn't want to, he would argue up and down with his mom. But the second he realized that it was not just his mom that did not want that friend as his best man because that he wasn't a man of God. The second he realized that it was God that he was really arguing with and wrestling with, he was humble and he stepped out in faith regardless of what his friend reaction was going to be, and he was faithful to God. And because of his faithfulness to God, his friend that he'd already planted so many seeds in, he got to see the fruit of those seeds. And that is awesome. And that's just this is towards the end of this podcast, but that's just another reason that I believe this podcast, that when I listen to it, is one of the best podcasts I've listened to. Between Ruslan's testimonies, between where Ruslan, which I didn't go over, but he talks about some of his reconciliation with his mom, which you should go listen to if you haven't listened to it, and George Janko's faithfulness and how it gets his friend baptized. All of that stuff together is just an amazing thing to listen to, and I'm very thankful for this podcast. And if you got anything out of this video, I just want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and get it out there more. And go watch this full podcast. I'll link it down below. But if you want to support the channel, there's going to be links down in the description that are going to support us financially, between just giving up front or going and purchasing something on one of our affiliate links. It helps us get out there. It helps us make more videos like this, but not only the ones like this, but if you've seen any of the videos where I go out in public, I do outreaches, I talk to people about who Jesus is, I get people to share their testimonies, I talk to unsaved people, share the gospel with them, which for some of them is probably the first time they hear it. I want to do that all around the world, and hopefully this YouTube channel fully funds that one day. And if God puts it in your heart, go and give. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a blessed day.